If you want to grow tomatoes in your urban garden, I recommend cherry tomatoes. Cherry tomatoes are easy to grow. They produce a lot of tomatoes. You can get a lot of tomatoes off of just one plant. And have you ever used a beefsteak tomato, for example, and you sliced it and you only needed a couple of slices? Then you put the other half of the tomato in the refrigerator or wherever, and you just never get back to it, so you end up composting it, which is not a waste, or throwing it away for those of you that aren't into composting. Well, with cherry tomatoes, you can take just the tomatoes that you need. All right, and they're easy to store as well. So let me zoom in real quick. These cherry tomatoes, everywhere you see a flower, that's a potential fruit. So these are the flowers, and this is where flowers used to be, and you can see that these are now fruit. All right. Now, some of the tomatoes I grow in containers, but that's going to be much more expensive. The way I prefer to grow these tomatoes is in raised beds. And these are the temporary style raised beds that I use. I've shared with you all before that I use the temporary construction method or building method that many of our ancestors used, where they're going to take the same resources and they're going to use them in different ways. So these cinder blocks here were used as part of our mini greenhouse, all right, throughout the winter. But of course, we don't need a greenhouse to protect from the winter weather in the middle of the summer. So we deconstructed the greenhouse and we reconstructed these raised beds here. Here I have two of them, and each raised bed contains one cherry tomato plant. And these cherry tomato plants are massive. So this is the base, this is the raised bed. I only use 8 cinder blocks. The cinder blocks are 16 inches across, and they're 16 inches high because I used 2. Each one is 8 inches high. So I used 2, and I didn't fill the soil all the way up to the top. Just showing you what I did. White stuff that you see at the bottom is eggshells. Eggshells are good for producing calcium for your tomato plants. All right, and tomato plants do tend to suffer from calcium deficiency, especially after they begin flowering and fruiting. But they really put off a lot of tomatoes here. This is one bunch. All right, you take what you need, the rest you store. One bunch. And they grow quite tall. So as you can see, I started out with this tomato cage. Back in the spring, I used this tomato cage. Let me see if I can zoom out. I used this tomato cage, some of you may remember, as a cold frame. So you just take a clear, contractor's trash bag, and you slip it over top of the tomato cage, and you can go as early as April in the DMV. It may vary depending on where you live, because some areas, I understand, still get frost into May. So mid-April, you can put these tomato cages out if you start growing your tomatoes indoors, and cover it with the plastic, and it'll protect it from the frost. But it's important that you sit it in a sunny location, okay? Because during the day, it's going to collect the heat, and at night, the heat is going to take a long time to escape. All right, so it's going to protect it from the frost. What else? As it outgrows the cage, this is the cage. This is the plant. The plant is stretching all the way up, almost to the top of the house. All right, you're going to start to need to bring in stakes, and the stakes are very, very cheap. You can buy them. You can go cut them down. This is bamboo, and some of you have bamboo forests where you live. I know I do. So I can cut down bamboo. I tried that last year, but I didn't know how to preserve the bamboo so it wouldn't deteriorate before the end of the growing season. I did use it, however, to grow my string beans, and it lasted long enough to grow the string beans, but string beans grow in a much shorter span of time than do tomatoes. Okay, so these tomatoes are going to grow all the way through August and into September, and even October if we had a year like last year, which is not a problem. But you're going to need to think about how you're going to support these tomato plants if you don't want them sprawling on the ground, which I do not. Okay, so massive amounts of tomatoes. I didn't want to go too far, but I did want to share with you that if you're going to grow tomatoes in your urban garden and you don't have a lot of space, one cherry tomato plant can produce massive amounts of tomatoes. This has been Daku. Peace.